Detective Sarah Lawson was halfway out the door when her desk phone rang. She almost ignored it. Her shift had ended 10 minutes ago and a warm plate of takeout was waiting for her at home. But something made her pause. Instinct, maybe. She exhaled, ran a hand through her auburn hair, and picked up the receiver. Raleigh PD, Detective Lawson speaking. A frantic voice filled her ear. "Please, you have to help me. My friend is missing." Sarah sat back down, already pulling out her notepad. "Slow down. What's your name?" "Jenna Lewis," the caller stammered. "My best friend, Emily Carter. She's gone. She's not answering her phone, and she didn't show up for work today. That's not like her." "How long has she been missing?" "Since last night. We were texting, and then nothing. I thought maybe she fell asleep, but now her mom says she never came home. Her car is still in the driveway. Her phone is inside. She wouldn't just leave without it." Sarah tapped her pen against her desk. People went missing all the time, but this case already felt different. No phone, no car, no sign of a struggle. Just a young woman who had seemingly disappeared into thin air. "All right, Jenna, give me Emily's address. I'm on my way." 20 minutes later, Sarah pulled up to a cozy suburban home. The porch light flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the driveway. A woman, mid-50s, stood near the front door, arms wrapped around herself despite the warm North Carolina air. "Mrs. Carter?" "Detective Lawson," she introduced herself, flashing her badge. "Tell me what you know." Tears glistened in the woman's eyes. "Emily is a creature of habit. She always calls me before bed, but last night, nothing. When I came downstairs this morning, her purse was still on the table. Her dinner was half-eaten." Sarah's gaze moved to the kitchen window, where a single plate sat abandoned on the counter. Something about the scene gnawed at her. It was as if Emily had just stepped away, expecting to return. But she never did. Detective Sarah Lawson stepped into Emily Carter's home, her boots clicking softly against the hardwood floor. The house smelled of lavender air freshener, but beneath it lingered something else. An eerie stillness, like a place left untouched for too long. Emily's mother stood behind her, wringing her hands. "Nothing is missing. Not her car, not her purse, not even her phone. It doesn't make sense." Sarah walked through the living room, scanning the space. A half-folded pile of laundry sat on the couch, as if Emily had been mid-task. On the counter, her dinner remained uneaten, a plate of pasta now stiff and dry. It was as if she had simply gotten up and walked away, expecting to return. But she hadn't. "She was last seen here inside the house?" Sarah asked. Mrs. Carter shook her head. "No, she went out onto the porch around 9 last night. I was already in bed, but I heard her talking to someone on the phone. It didn't sound like an argument, but I could tell she was nervous. Then, nothing. I fell asleep, and when I woke up, she was gone." Sarah's gut twisted. "Did she say who she was talking to?" "No. She never mentioned meeting anyone. But Detective Emily isn't reckless. She wouldn't just leave like this." Sarah stepped outside onto the porch. The cool night air brushed against her face as she examined the quiet street. Neat lawns, parked cars, porch lights glowing faintly in the dark. "Any security cameras in the neighborhood?" Mrs. Carter nodded. "The Johnsons across the street have one. I already asked, but they said they didn't see anything." Sarah wasn't convinced. She crossed the street, knocked on the Johnsons' door, and soon found herself reviewing grainy security footage. At 8:45 p.m., Emily stepped onto her porch, phone in hand. She paced for a moment, then nodded as if agreeing to something. A minute later, she walked off-camera toward the street. And that was it. No car, no second figure, just a woman walking into the night and vanishing. Sarah rewound the footage. Something wasn't right. Emily had left without her purse, without her phone, without anything. Whatever had pulled her away had been urgent, or worse, planned. Detective Sarah Lawson sat at her desk, eyes locked on Emily Carter's phone records. The last outgoing call, made at 8:43 p.m., was to a burner phone. No name, no known owner, a dead end. Jenna Lewis sat across from her, gripping a styrofoam cup of coffee, her hands trembling slightly. "She never told me she was meeting anyone, but—" Jenna hesitated, biting her lip. "There is something." Sarah leaned forward. Go on. Jenna exhaled shakily. A few weeks ago, Emily mentioned someone she met online. She said it was nothing serious, just chatting. But lately she was acting different. Checking her phone all the time, smiling at messages she wouldn't show me. I thought maybe she had a crush. Sarah's stomach tightened. Did she say a name? Yeah, Ryder. She told me he was sweet. They'd never met in person. At least, that's what she said. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard as she accessed Emily's social media accounts. Sure enough, she found a private chat with someone named Ryder89. The messages started casual, small talk about movies, music, life. But as the days went on, they grew more personal. Ryder89. You're different from other girls. I feel like I can trust you. Emily Carter, same. It's weird, but I feel like I've known you forever. The messages continued for weeks. Ryder had been careful, never revealing too much, always steering the conversation toward trust. Then, 2 days before Emily disappeared, his tone shifted. Ryder89. I think we should finally meet. Just us. No distractions. Emily Carter, I don't know, what if it's weird? Ryder89. It won't be. I promise. Meet me by the old bridge at 9 p.m. I'll be waiting. Sarah's pulse quickened. The old bridge. The same time Emily had disappeared. She met him, Jenna whispered, reading over Sarah's shoulder. She actually met him. Sarah grabbed her coat. We need to get to that bridge, now. Something told her they weren't going to like what they found. Detective Sarah Lawson pulled up to the old bridge just past midnight, her headlights cutting through the thick fog that clung to the trees. The area was desolate. No streetlights, no houses, just an aging wooden bridge stretching over a shallow creek. The perfect place to disappear. Jenna sat in the passenger seat, her fingers digging into her sleeves. She really came here. Sarah stepped out of the car, her boots crunching against the gravel. The night was eerily silent except for the distant hoot of an owl. She flicked on her flashlight, scanning the ground. At first, nothing, just dirt, scattered leaves, and the faint glimmer of water below. But then, in about 10 feet from the bridge, something pale against the dark earth. A shoe. Jenna gasped. Oh my God! That's Emily's! Sarah crouched, careful not to disturb anything. It was a white sneaker, its laces still neatly tied. Emily had been standing here. But where was she now? Her flashlight beam swept forward, landing on a small, dark stain near the bridge's edge. What? Not much, but enough to make Sarah's stomach drop. Someone had been hurt. She turned back to Jenna, who looked like she might collapse. Stay in the car, Sarah ordered. I need to call forensics. As Sarah reached for her radio, a rustling sound came from the trees beyond the bridge. She froze, instinctively placing a hand on her holstered weapon. The beam of her flashlight danced across the thick underbrush. Emily, she called. No answer. She stepped carefully toward the noise, heart pounding. The trees loomed overhead, their twisted branches forming dark silhouettes against the night sky. Something had happened here. She could feel it. But was Emily still out there, or had she been taken somewhere else? The static of her radio crackled. Lawson, we've got something. Security footage from a gas station 2 miles from Emily's house. A man buying duct tape and gloves. Black hoodie, tall, driving a black Chevy Silverado. Sarah's grip on the flashlight tightened. Do we have a plate? She asked. Partial, running it now. Sarah turned back to the bridge. Blood, a missing girl, and now a shadowy figure in a truck. This wasn't a simple disappearance. It was a hunt. The black Chevy Silverado rolled through Sarah Lawson's mind like a thunderstorm. A man in a hoodie, duct tape, gloves, every warning sign of premeditated abduction. She gritted her teeth, gripping the steering wheel as she sped toward the outskirts of town. Patrol officers had spotted a truck matching the description near an abandoned hunting cabin deep in the woods. It was a long shot, but right now it was the only lead they had. Jenna had begged to come, but Sarah refused. If Emily was alive, this was about to get dangerous. 20 minutes later, Sarah and 2 patrol units turned onto a narrow dirt road, headlights slicing through the dense forest. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the silence was suffocating. Then, through the trees, she saw it. A run-down wooden cabin, its windows boarded up, its roof sagging with age, and in front of it, parked haphazardly in the grass, a black Chevy Silverado. Sarah killed the engine. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears as she reached for her gun. "Move in quiet," she whispered to the officers. "We don't know what we're walking into." The team fanned out, moving like shadows through the underbrush. Sarah reached the cabin's front door and pressed her ear against it. Faint shuffling, a muffled noise, a voice, low, indistinct. Then a whimper. Sarah's stomach twisted. "Emily." She signaled to the others, then took a deep breath before kicking in the door. The wood splintered as she stormed inside, weapon raised. The first thing she saw was Emily tied to a chair, wrists bound with duct tape, tears streaking her dirt-smeared face. Her wide eyes locked onto Sarah's, pleading. The second thing she saw was him, a tall man in a dark hoodie standing behind Emily, a knife glinting in his grip. His face, pale, sharp features, dark eyes that held nothing human, twisted in shock. "Drop it," Sarah barked, her finger tightening on the trigger. For a moment, everything hung in the air. Then, with a snarl, the man lunged. A gunshot rang through the cabin. Then silence. Emily sobbed. The man collapsed. Sarah exhaled, lowering her weapon. The hunt was over. The smell of gunpowder still hung in the air as Detective Sarah Lawson holstered her weapon. The suspect lay motionless on the cabin floor, his knife clattering from his grip. A slow, shallow breath rattled from his chest. Alive, but barely. The officers rushed in, securing the scene while Sarah moved toward Emily. "Emily," Sarah said gently, crouching beside her, "you're safe now." Emily let out a sob, half relief, half exhaustion. Her wrists were raw from the tape, her cheeks streaked with dried tears. She nodded shakily, unable to speak. "Get EMS in here," Sarah called over her shoulder. Within minutes, the room swarmed with officers and paramedics. They cut Emily free, wrapping her in a warm blanket before leading her outside. She clung to Sarah's arm as they stepped into the cool night air. The flashing red and blue lights of squad cars painted the trees in eerie hues. Jenna was already there, waiting. As soon as she saw Emily, she ran forward, pulling her into a crushing embrace. "Oh my God, I thought—" Jenna's voice broke, her grip tightening. "I thought I lost you." Emily trembled, burying her face in her friend's shoulder. "I thought I was gone too." Sarah exhaled, rubbing a hand over her face. The case was over, but the weight of it still pressed against her chest. She turned back toward the cabin as paramedics loaded the suspect onto a stretcher. "Name's Daniel Riker," an officer said, reading from his ID. "Records show prior arrests for stalking, but no convictions. He's been using fake profiles to lure women for years." Sarah's jaw tightened. Not anymore. She watched as they wheeled Riker toward an ambulance, his face pale, his breathing weak. He would survive, but he'd never walk free again. As the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, Emily sat on the back of an ambulance, sipping water with shaky hands. Sarah knelt beside her. "You're strong," Sarah said softly. "You fought to survive." Emily swallowed hard. "I was so scared, but I kept thinking, someone would come, someone would find me." Sarah squeezed her hand. "We always do." The nightmare was over, but the shadows it cast would linger.